Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 5 greatest Mozart pianists. You know, I love doing lists like this. People enjoy lists. They do. Every so often, some fetch shows up and says, "Oh, stop doing lists, do something else," and all that. But the truth is, we do a little of everything, so I don't really care. If I just wanted to let you know, let's put it this way, that there are now in the Lists with Twists playlist, yes, 355 lists. That's a lot of lists. And you can find lists of just about everything that you can play with on your own and tinker with and enjoy. So I just wanted to let you know that this is a resource that you can browse through. In fact, I'm going to put a link to the Lists with Twists playlist below this video, just so that you can go and have a little look at the wider picture, because it's kind of amazing how much stuff is there. And what really is amazing about it is just how helpful you all have been in creating these lists. I know that I'm kind of rough and I curate these things with vigor, shall we just say. But I really believe that we've got a resource going here that's amazing. And it's largely thanks to you and your contributions. In this case, at least those of you who know how to count to 5. I mean, that's not everybody, but those of you who can are really making a tremendous contribution to, the quality of these lists and the utility of these lists, especially for newcomers who may not know their classics all that well and who are looking for recommendations. I see it in the comments. You can see it in the comments if you read them. People saying, well, gee, I was looking for, other performances and I didn't know which artists to turn to. And you're providing that information. I mean, I started off, but you complete the picture. So thank you all for participating. And I just think I just marvel at this. I really do. There's such a fabulous fund of musical knowledge out there. It isn't just us critics. Actually, it's probably mostly not us critics. It's mostly you listeners who over the years have dedicated yourself to this. And it's such a wonderful thing to be able to share this information with the wider world for those, 1 or 2 people who are interested. I know, I'm cynical, but it's classical music, right? So let's talk about the 5 greatest Mozart pianists. Number 1, and these are in no particular order, by the way. I mean, they never are, but number 1 on my list, Alicia de Larrocha, Alicia de Larrocha. That's it. Or Alicia de Larrocha, if you want to call her that. What a wonderful artist she was. Oh, my goodness. And such a fabulous Mozart pianist. I mean, she did lots of concertos, lots of sonatas and other pieces. Over the course of her entire career, she was the queen of the Mostly Mozart Festival in New York for like decades. Her music had elegance, it had style, it had taste, it had everything you were looking for, and a certain muscularity when required as well. Mozart wasn't all just lightness and charm and delectability. She was a fabulously musical person, and her Mozart is, it's classic stuff. It really is. After her, let's do a period instrument guy because we have to. No, because it's worth it, actually. Robert Levin. Robert Levin is channeling Mozart, just like Rosalind Turek channeled Bach, except that he's really much better at channeling Mozart than Rosalind Turek was at channeling Bach, because he can play Mozart up to tempo, which is always a good thing, really a good thing. But Levin is a fabulous scholar performer whose complete set of Mozart sonatas, and he's done the Mozart piano concertos, he's done like everything, but his recent sonata set was absolutely stunning, fantastic on a beautiful sounding forte piano. Boy, has he got his Mozart in his fingers. And Robert Levin belongs on any list of people who care about Mozart. He really does. He also, completes the things that Mozart didn't complete. And he does it better than Mozart would have probably. So, just ask him. He'll tell you that. So there you go, Robert Levin. Then, a more limited Mozartian, but still, in terms of repertoire that she was able to do, Clara Haskil. Clara Haskil is such an incredible pianist. I mean, you never. She plays music as though she's composing it on the spot. Let's put it that way. And she was a fabulous chamber music partner, especially with, Arthur Grumio and Mozart violin sonatas and things like that. She was great. Her Mozart concerto recordings are not all that numerous, but really it's the largest concerto repertoire that she was able to record. And they are fantastic. Some are in mono, some are in stereo. She had a very sad life. She was kind of a tragic figure. I remember very vividly Tatiana Nikolieva's description of her. It's a wonderful thing you could look up pretty easily. But she talks about how she was in Vienna for something or other, and everyone said you had to go see Clara Haskil, and she was giving a recording, I think she says, with Karajan conducting, but the Vienna Philharmonic, and she's sitting there, this old hag walked out, she was like hunched over, her hair was like a rat's nest, and she sat over the piano like this with her fingers up, and then just blew her mind. Nikolieva could not believe the sounds that were coming from the instrument under Clara Haskil's fingers. She was a soulful and wonderfully brilliant musician, and everything that she did is valuable. I don't think she made a single recording that doesn't have musical insights of a really sort of irreplaceable kind. Even Faya's Nights in the Gardens of Spain with Igor Markevich. What a great performance that is, and how unexpected. She could really do just about anything. And so her Mozart is really, really special. And especially the concertos. So yes, Clara Haskil for sure. Murray Perahia. Absolutely Murray Perahia. Of course, there's the big box of concertos that he did with the English Chamber Orchestra as soloist and conductor. Now, I've always maintained that it's better to have a separate conductor. And I think it's true here as well. I really do. But Perahia's Mozart is so sensitive. It's absolutely lovely and intelligent and tasteful. And, taste is an issue with Mozart, by the way. You got to have taste. Can't do Mozart without taste. You really can't. I mean, Mozart thought so. He really did. That was one of the qualities in music that he admired. It had to be emotionally affecting, but also tasteful. And that's a very difficult quality to define, isn't it? I mean, really, because there's a very narrow edge between tasteful and boring. Tasteful meaning conservative, limited, restricted. And that's not what Mozart had in mind at all. And that's not what Perahia has in mind when he plays Mozart. He does it so beautifully. And next, last but not least, Lili Kraus, the great Viennese pianist. She was a Mozart specialist. She was a pupil of Arthur Schnabel. And her Mozart is fascinating. It's actually kind of edgy, a little angular, a little bit provocative even, but she does it within the stylistic idiom, within the bounds of good taste. She makes you think. She's probing. She did all the sonatas one way or another. Sony released 2 boxes, one of her sonatas, one of her complete concertos. Now the concertos are kind of interesting because they're with something called like the Vienna Festival Orchestra under Stephen Sloan, I believe. I mean, it's a pickup orchestra. And in 1965, 66, when these things were recorded, pickup orchestras were pickup orchestras. They are not great ensembles. And people fuss about, how the orchestra is sort of, scruffy string-wise and has sort of iffy intonation, and all of that's true. I mean, you've got to make allowances, but the piano playing is just marvelously thoughtful and interesting. And beyond that, it's very funny. People huffle and snuffle about period this and period that. What do you think an orchestra sounded like in Mozart's day? You wanted challenged intonation? Are you kidding? I mean, that's probably closer to what we ever really got. It's very funny how people are so arrogant even when it comes to things like intonation and ensemble. I mean, I want great intonation. I want fabulous ensemble. I want it all to be top, top, top. But in reality, it wasn't always. And there's real music being made in those performances. Sometimes you have to just lighten up a little bit when you have a really great artist with something to say, doing her best under the circumstances that are presented. And everyone's doing their best. It's not like anyone's trying not to be great. It's just not everybody has it in them all the time. But her Mozart playing, as such, is marvelous and distinctive. Really, really unique. And I think that that's qualifies her unquestionably as one of the greatest Mozart pianists. So I am very interested to see your lists. I mean, I can think of quite a few people who aren't on mine who might well appear on yours. So, as usual, I know it's going to be a very stimulating discussion, and we're going to, between us, come up with the entire list of great Mozart pianists who ever existed. But try and find people who did a chunk of everything. A bunch of sonatas, a bunch of concerti. They're interesting. It's interesting, actually, because, they're very different repertoires. Mozart's piano concertos are some of the greatest works ever written. His sonatas, they're not on such a high level. Mostly, some of them are, but mostly because he wrote them for his pupils and for didactic purposes, and he didn't put his full energy into writing solo piano music. When he was with the orchestra, on the other hand, it was like when he was writing an opera. He had a character that he could dramatize in an orchestral frame, and everything comes alive. And so artists who can do both well have to have somewhat different qualities, bring somewhat different qualities to bear, I think. And it's very interesting to see who those artists are. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me, and take care.